What's your secret that could literally ruin your life if it came out? Story 1. I'm a man in my late 20s who spent most of my childhood in foster care. People around me know that I had a rough start in life, and I usually tell them it was due to family issues and leave it at that. The truth is far stranger. Until I was nearly 8 years old, I was raised as a girl by my mother, who desperately wanted a daughter. She had conceived me through a fertility clinic and, upon learning I was male during a late-stage scan, relocated and began raising me as female anyway. We moved often, and I attended a conservative all-girls school where I was treated like any other student. I didn't question my identity. I thought I would just become a woman one day. Everything changed the day a teacher spilled hot tea on me at school. They had to remove my clothes, and that's when they discovered I was biologically male. Authorities got involved. My mother, convinced she had a daughter, was declared mentally unfit. I was placed in foster care and told I was a boy now. The transition was traumatic. My first foster home tried to force boyish behaviors on me, and I became deeply depressed. I attempted to end my life more than once. Eventually, I was placed with a compassionate family who let me grow my hair, quit sports I didn't enjoy, and find myself. I now have a stable career and a loving wife. Still, I've never told anyone about those early years living as a girl. It's a part of my past I keep locked away. Story 2. I run a high-end cake decorating business. My customers shell out hundreds of dollars for wedding cakes, and I'm known in my circle as a baking expert. But the truth? Every single cake I make starts with boxed mix from the supermarket. I've never been good at baking from scratch, it always turns out wrong. But I'm great at presentation. I make all the frosting and decorations myself. Those are truly handcrafted. My clients rave about how homemade everything tastes and how it's better than anything they could make. Little do they know the actual cake is the easiest part, made with a $1 mix and some eggs and oil. Only my husband knows the truth. I've been meaning to learn proper baking, but I never follow through. The guilt nags at me, especially when friends say I've inspired them to bake from scratch. I feel like I'm living a lie, but I also love the art of decorating. If anyone found out, I'm sure it would damage the reputation I've spent years building. Story 3. This is something I rarely talk about. When I was a child, both of my parents were military personnel working long shifts. During those hours, I stayed with a family friend, a warm, nurturing woman who had adopted children of her own. I spent a lot of time with her teenage son, who seemed fun and cool at the time. Eventually, our time together turned dark. It began with small, seemingly innocent moments, but over time he violated my trust and boundaries. I didn't fully understand what was happening until much later. When the babysitter grew suspicious, I denied everything. Eventually, my mom changed my sitter, but the damage had already been done. As I got older, I wrestled with confusion, depression, and a deep mistrust of intimacy. Talking about it with my partner years later helped me begin to heal. Humor eventually became a tool I used to process what happened. Though I still carry the scars, I've managed to build a fulfilling life. But that part of my childhood still feels like a shadow I can't entirely escape. Story 4. When I was a kid, I had a younger brother who was blind. At the time, I unfairly resented the extra attention he got from our parents. Sometimes, when we were out on our own, I would quietly walk away and leave him in unfamiliar places just to see him panic. I'd watch from afar until I felt guilty enough to return. I also deliberately gave him wrong answers while helping with homework so I could feel superior. Now, he's one of the most self-sufficient, brilliant people I know. We're very close, and I think of him as my best friend. I've never told him the things I did when we were little. I still carry guilt for treating someone who depended on me that way. Story 5. During my second year of college, I came dangerously close to ending my life. I had been battling depression for years, stemming from childhood abuse by my older siblings. I reached a breaking point one night and planned to overdose using a mix of pills and liquor. But just as I was about to follow through, the taste of the alcohol made me gag. I couldn't do it. I ran to a friend's dorm and confessed everything: my mental state, the abuse, and the attempt. That was the first time I had ever told anyone. My family didn't take it well. They accused me of being dramatic or making excuses to avoid school. I tried to return to college, but the stress was too much. I had to drop out again, and the verbal abuse at home only intensified. Now I feel stuck. I don't have the means to leave or get proper help. I'm constantly trying to keep myself in a neutral emotional state just to survive. I haven't spoken to anyone in months. Writing this is the closest I've come to asking for help in a long time. Story 6. High school was brutal. I was awkward and tried too hard to fit in, which only made me a target. A group of jocks picked on me constantly. One day, after a particularly humiliating incident in front of a girl I liked, I decided I'd had enough. I took my dad's pistol. He used the same code for everything and brought it to school. I had every intention of using it. In my mind, I was beyond fear. But as I walked toward the bully's lunch table, the gun slipped from my shorts and clattered to the ground. Panic erupted. A teacher tackled me before I could explain anything. They believed I was just trying to look tough. I was expelled and sent to a youth facility. I never told anyone my actual plan. I'm in my mid-20s now, but the trauma of those years still haunts me. I avoid people because I'm terrified of what I might do if that rage ever returns. Story 7. In 8th grade, a group of girls tricked me into believing I had a secret admirer. They created fake social media accounts, sent me messages, and even set up a date where no one showed. Then they exposed the whole thing to our class. It was humiliating. Since then, I've had issues with trust and intimacy. I flinch at affection and second-guess anyone who shows interest. Even texting people first makes me anxious. The worst part is how silly I feel for falling for it. My college friends don't know this story. I've become good at masking my discomfort, but if they ever found out, I'd be mortified. It's a scar from adolescence that still shapes how I see relationships today. Story 8. From 6th grade through high school graduation, I faked a chronic illness to avoid school. I claimed to have debilitating pain that kept me bedridden. My family, doctors, and teachers all believed me. I was enrolled in a home study program and shaped my own schedule. Over the years, my family racked up tens of thousands in medical bills. I never realized how much financial strain I was causing until I turned 18. When I got accepted to college, I decided the pain had miraculously gone away. Nobody questioned it. I live with intense guilt. My family is still paying off the debt. I want to confess, but I know I can't. If the truth came out, I'd lose the trust of everyone who supported me. It's a lie that grew too big to take back. Story 9. For several years during my teens, I experienced vivid auditory hallucinations. It started with me talking to a poster on my wall, which eventually started talking back. This voice, which I named Lane, felt like a divine presence. Later, another voice emerged, one I called Misery. Lane would comfort me, while Misery would point out all my flaws, urging me to harm myself. Their presence felt so real, like close companions. At some point, I realized I was hallucinating, and slowly, the voices faded. I've told a few people about the hallucinations. What I haven't shared is how much I missed them. They were always there, always listening. Even Misery felt like someone who understood me. Now that I'm healthy, I've never felt lonelier. I'd give anything to feel that connection again, even if it meant losing touch with reality. Story 10. When I was 12, I went to a discount store with family. While they shopped, I wandered into the toy aisle and began playing with loose marbles that someone had opened. One rolled far down the aisle and I didn't think much of it. Minutes later, there was a loud crash nearby. A man had fallen from a ladder and hit his head. He was having a seizure and bleeding. We left before emergency services arrived, but on a later visit, the cashier told us the man had died. They said his ladder had slipped on a marble. I was horrified. I wanted to confess to my mom, but she dismissed it, saying I was just feeling guilty for no reason. I've carried that weight ever since, never sure if it was truly my fault. But deep down, I think it was. Story 11. When I turned 18, I left my small town behind and started a new life. I was constantly at odds with my family and didn't fit in with anyone back home. After bouncing between friends' couches for a while, I eventually found stability in California and began a serious relationship with a woman named Eliza. We were together for over 3 years. Things ended when she wanted more commitment, and I wasn't ready. Years later, my younger brother called to tell me he was engaged and asked me to be his best man. I was surprised but agreed. When I flew home and met his fiancée, my heart nearly stopped. It was Eliza. Neither of us said anything. We played along as if we were strangers. That night, we ended up talking in private, and one thing led to another. We were intimate several times over the following days. Eventually, we realized we couldn't keep doing it and stopped before the wedding. Everything went smoothly, and I returned to California. Months later, Eliza called to say she was pregnant and that based on timing, she believed the child was mine. We agreed to keep it secret. My brother still thinks he's the father. The baby's first birthday is coming up, and I'm quietly trying to live with the guilt. Story 12. One Friday, I went to pick up my daughter from school. She was usually a bit late, so I waited in the parking lot. After nearly an hour with no response to my texts or calls, I began to worry. I went inside the school, but no one had seen her recently. Eventually, after combing the surrounding blocks, I found her unconscious in an alley. She had been assaulted. Her injuries were severe, and we rushed her to the hospital. She recovered physically, but emotionally, she was never the same. The police asked questions, but my daughter claimed not to know who hurt her. Soon after, a teenager with a mohawk and gym shirts began visiting our apartment. My daughter insisted they were just friends. Eventually, I read her diary and discovered he had been the one who attacked her. She was still seeing him, convinced he felt remorse. I didn't tell anyone, not even my wife. One evening, while they were out, the boy came over. I told him to wait on the roof. After a few minutes, I went up and confronted him. Overwhelmed by rage, I pushed him off the roof. When police arrived, I said I barely knew him. They ruled it a suicide. No one knows what really happened. Story 13. I had an affair with a married man. He left his wife to be with me, and we've been together ever since. I care deeply for him, and we're planning a future together. But the guilt of how it began is something I carry every day. When my friends found out, they turned away from me. I've become isolated at school, and he recently moved to another city for work, which only makes the loneliness worse. I walk through campus surrounded by people who once liked me but now judge me. Though we've been together for over a year and the affair itself is long over, I still feel ashamed. I know I need to talk to a counselor, and I plan to once I finish school. Just writing this down, even anonymously, gives me a small sense of relief. Story 14. My half-sister and I share a complicated history. Back when she lived with us during her teens, she really disliked my dad, who is technically her stepfather. He was strict and had a habit of leaving her out of small family rituals. One of those rituals was freshly squeezed orange juice every morning. My dad made it for himself, my mom, and me, but never for her. She hated that. One day, after he made his juice and stepped away, she drank half of it, refilled the glass with her own urine, and left it on the table. He drank the entire thing, oblivious. After that, she said nothing he did could ever truly bother her again. Their relationship eventually improved. She once joked that she'd only tell him the truth on his deathbed. It's one of those stories that's both disturbing and strangely hilarious in hindsight. Story 15. Since childhood, I've been deeply uncomfortable with how my face looks. By the age of 10, I started subtly altering my expressions to hide what I perceived as flaws. Droopy eyes, a noticeable overbite, and fuller lips. Over time, I got better at manipulating my facial muscles to create a more acceptable version of myself. I avoided cameras and hated sitting on one side of people because I couldn't control that half of my face as well. In college, I created a whole new persona, confident, social, attractive. But it was all an illusion. On bad days, I feel like I'm slipping, like the mask is cracking. After a close friend died, I entered a relationship I didn't truly want just to feel something. Now 21, I still live in fear of being seen for who I really am. I've never met anyone who shares this exact struggle. I want to stop hiding, but I'm terrified of what might happen if I do. Story 16. During my early teens, my mom, sister, and I lived with my stepdad in a better school district. At first, it seemed like a good arrangement. But when my mom wasn't around, he changed. He'd yell at us for small things, and eventually he started hitting us. He was careful, always leaving marks where they wouldn't show. My sister moved out as soon as she turned 18, but I had to stay for 3 more years. Once, I was so scared I ran into the woods and stayed hidden until my mom returned. That was the moment she finally believed me. We planned to leave after I graduated. In the meantime, life at home was unbearable. Now I'm in college, far from him, trying to heal. I don't hate him, but I can't forgive him either. I've never told anyone the full story until now. Story 17. 2 years ago, I hit rock bottom. I lost my job and my depression worsened. When I found out my wife was pregnant, I didn't feel joy. I felt like I was dragging her down. On the day I planned to end it all, my wife mentioned that our baby was the size of a sweet pea. At work, I found myself crying in the frozen foods aisle, asking why I should keep going. Just then, I heard someone call out my wife's name, and I looked down to see a box of sweet peas in my hand. Felt like a sign. I went home and told her everything. With her support, I got help. Now, our daughter is 2 and we're expecting again. That moment in the grocery store saved my life. Story 18. After my first year of high school, my parents sent me to a military-style summer camp because I got poor grades. I wasn't a troublemaker, just struggling with math. The camp was in the Midwest and felt like a punishment. One day, I let slip that I was Jewish. From then on, I was harassed relentlessly. Toward the end of my stay, a group of fellow campers tied me to 2 brooms shaped like a cross and mocked me. I never told my parents the full story, just that I was mistreated. Years later, while being evaluated for ADHD, the memory resurfaced. It left a deeper mark than I realized. That experience may have been the start of my shift away from religion. I still struggle to understand how hate can run so deep, but I try to counter it by being kind every day. Story 19. In the late 90s, I visited Amsterdam with my roommate who was from there. Through his connections, we ended up trying ecstasy during the cannabis cup. We brought some back and sold it to friends. Eventually, we began importing larger amounts. We tried mailing them inside candy boxes and using couriers who swallowed the pills or wore special vests. At one point, we were moving thousands of pills a month. But things unraveled when a contact got arrested. My roommate made a reckless solo trip and got caught. I quietly took over and expanded the operation, even connecting with international traffickers. But the risks grew, and after a close call with the authorities, I left everything behind. I finished school, got a legitimate job, and never looked back. My roommate went to prison. I kept my record clean. No one in my current life knows what I used to be involved in. Story 20. There was a guy I had a crush on since middle school. We shared the same birthday, and I always thought he was charming. We didn't attend the same school until high school, but by then, I was battling severe depression. Outwardly, I was popular, student body president, prom queen, always smiling. But inside, I was struggling. We eventually connected during senior year, and one night before college, we were intimate. I thought it meant something, but he stopped talking to me. Months later, during spring break, we saw each other at a party. He apologized, and we ended up kissing again. Things escalated, but when I asked him to stop, he didn't. I froze. For a long time, I couldn't call it what it was. I tried to believe he didn't mean harm, but now I see it clearly. I still haven't told many people. Writing this is the first step toward finally acknowledging the truth. Story 21. At 19, I've already developed a damaging pattern of behavior. I drink too much, lie frequently, and manipulate people to protect a version of myself that doesn't actually exist. I've exaggerated personal struggles to gain sympathy and let others take the fall for things I caused. I often present myself as passive or simple-minded so people underestimate me. That way, when I need to, I can use their assumptions to my advantage. I've lied to friends, cheated in small but meaningful ways, and shifted blame when it suited me. I tell myself I'll change, but each day I slip back into the same habits. Drinking helps me ignore the guilt. Deep down, I know I'm building a life on dishonesty, and I don't know how to stop. Story 22. My time in the military is something I barely talk about, even with my wife. Officially, I served 4 years in a combat unit. Unofficially, my service left me with wounds I can't explain. During a deployment, a child approached our vehicle. It happened often, kids asking for snacks or supplies. But this time, my commanding officer yelled for me to fire. I hesitated. Seconds later, the child threw a grenade into our vehicle, injuring several soldiers. I shot after the explosion. Everyone told me I had done what I had to, but I'll never forget that moment. I still see the child's face in my dreams. I've never told my wife what happened. When I held my newborn daughter for the first time, all I could think about was the life I had taken. It's hard to feel like a good father when I don't believe I deserve to be one. Story 23. I tend to let people walk all over me, especially financially. By the time I was 22, I had saved over $200,000 from working a good job. Then I moved in with my girlfriend after her mother passed away. Within a year, I was down to almost nothing. She wasn't working, and I found out later she was seeing other people in our apartment complex. I gave her money, bought groceries, paid rent, and never saw a dime returned. I've also lent thousands to friends who never paid me back. Even now, people only visit if I'm offering drinks or taking them out to eat. I don't know how to say no. I've reached a point where I don't even care anymore. I just want to stop being the person everyone takes for granted. Story 24. In college, I worked a paper delivery job in a rough neighborhood. I had to sprint upstairs in old buildings to meet the 6 a.m. deadline. My favorite stop was a high-rise where I could finally take a break in the elevator. Every morning, I'd see an elderly woman feeding stray cats outside that building. One day, I changed my delivery route and arrived earlier than usual. She wasn't there. The cats were sitting silently by the door. When the elevator came down, I decided to play a prank and jump out to scare whoever was inside. What I got instead was the old woman, collapsed on the floor, milk spilled everywhere. She didn't move. Panicked. I couldn't leave without making my delivery, somebody might notice. I pulled her legs into the elevator, rode it up, placed the paper, and left. I never heard anything about her after that. I still don't know if I caused her death. The cats watched me leave like they knew. Story 25. When I was a kid, my mom and I were running from my father, who had become mentally unstable. One night, we stopped at a roadside motel. I heard a vehicle pull up and noticed a man outside. He didn't seem threatening, so I went back to bed. Later, I woke up to the sound of our door being forced open. My dad was cutting through the chain lock. I woke my mom, and we escaped through the bathroom window. I helped her hide in a pool shed, then went back for the car. As I turned a corner, he grabbed me. He pulled a knife, but I broke free and ran. A stranger driving by stopped to help, until my father appeared and stabbed him. I ran again, somehow managing to get to safety. We never saw that man's car again. I never told my mother what happened. I think about that stranger often. He likely disappeared without anyone knowing why. Story 26. When I was in high school, I worked part-time delivering newspapers. One of the buildings had an elevator so slow that it became my rest stop. Every morning, an older woman would be outside feeding strays. After months of routine, I decided to start my route in reverse just for a change. That morning, the woman wasn't outside. The cats were waiting. I thought it strange but didn't question it. I pressed the elevator button and decided to hide beside it to startle whoever came down. When the doors opened, I jumped out yelling, only to see the woman lying unconscious inside. Milk was everywhere. Panicked. I didn't want to be connected to her death, so I pulled her legs in, delivered the newspaper, and left. No police ever came. No one asked questions. I never found out what happened, but I still live with the fear that my prank caused her death. Story 27. As a teenager, I went through a dark period and relied heavily on alcohol. I would drink alone just to feel something. I became known for being unpredictable, sometimes funny, sometimes reckless. There were nights I would black out and wake up with no memory of what I'd said or done. I lost friends and broke trust. I've lied about the severity of my drinking habits, even to people who care about me. Now, I'm trying to cut back, but the temptation is always there. Drinking helps me forget all the lies and failures I've racked up. I'm scared that if I stop, I'll have to face everything I've tried to bury. Story 28. My father used to tell me that being honest was the most important thing a man could do. But I've built much of my life on half-truths. I've exaggerated my accomplishments, downplayed my mistakes, and pretended to be someone I'm not. My biggest lie: I never finished college. I tell everyone I graduated, even my employer. On paper, it looks like I did. I know it could collapse at any moment, but I can't bring myself to come clean. I'm terrified of losing everything I've built. I live in constant fear that someone will do a background check and expose me. It eats at me every day. Story 29. When I was younger, I had a friend who was constantly in trouble. He had a way of dragging people into messes. One day, he asked me to help him with a favor. He told me it was just picking up a package. We drove across town, and when we got there, he handed me a bag and told me not to open it. I didn't ask questions. We dropped it off at another house, and he gave me $200. Later, I found out the bag contained stolen goods. I never got caught, but I still feel like an accomplice. I never confronted him about it, and we drifted apart soon after. Sometimes I wonder if he kept doing things like that, and if other people weren't as lucky as I was. Story 30. I used to think I had everything under control. I had a good job, a decent apartment, and a small group of friends. But over the years, I've developed a habit of emotionally detaching from everyone. I pretend I'm interested in people's lives, but I keep them at arm's length. I lie when I say I'm busy just to avoid hanging out. I don't return calls. I disappear from group chats. The truth is, I'm deeply afraid of being known. I've created a version of myself that's easy to like but hard to get close to. I often wonder if anyone truly knows me, or if they would even want to. Story 31. I'm a high school chemistry teacher, married with 2 kids. What no one knows is that I run an anonymous online forum where I give detailed instructions on how to create illegal substances, purely for educational purposes. Or so I claim. It started as a way to vent my frustrations with underfunded labs and apathetic students. I wrote guides for fun, not thinking anyone would actually use them. But the forum grew. People started messaging me for advice, sending photos of their setups, asking for troubleshooting tips. Some of them even thanked me for helping them get their business going. That's when I realized what I'd created. I tried to shut it down, but it was too late. Mirror sites popped up, and my posts were archived. If my school, my wife, or the authorities ever found out, I'd lose everything. I'm terrified every time I hear a knock at the door unexpectedly. I live with the constant fear that my curiosity and ego may destroy my entire life. Story 32. I'm a well-respected veterinarian in my city. People bring me their pets and trust me with their lives. But 10 years ago, during my final year of vet school, I caused the death of an animal and lied to cover it up. The dog was brought in for a routine surgery. I was exhausted, hadn't slept in over 30 hours, but I insisted on handling it myself. I made a careless mistake with the anesthesia dosage. The dog went into cardiac arrest, and we couldn't revive him. Instead of admitting my error, I said the dog had an allergic reaction. The attending vet signed off on my report. The owners were devastated, but they never knew the truth. I graduated, built a successful clinic, and have helped thousands of animals since. But every time I see a golden retriever, I think of that one. If anyone ever uncovered the hospital records or questioned what really happened, I'd lose my license, my practice, and my name. I've lived with that guilt for a decade, and it hasn't gotten easier. Story 33. I'm in a happy relationship with someone who believes I've never cheated. That's what makes this so awful, because I did cheat, and not just once. During a long-distance stretch in our relationship, I started seeing someone casually. I told myself it didn't count. We weren't technically exclusive then, right? But we were. I knew it. The worst part isn't the betrayal. It's that the person I cheated with is still in my partner's life. She has no idea that her funny friend from trivia night was once in my bed. We even laugh together now, the 3 of us. I sometimes wonder if he feels as guilty as I do. If the truth ever came out, it wouldn't just end my relationship. It would destroy her trust in everyone around her. I've considered confessing, but I know it would be selfish. So I keep quiet, carry the guilt, and try to be the partner she believes I've always been. But sometimes I wonder if she can sense it, if she knows something's off and is just waiting for me to admit it. Story 34. I'm a software engineer at a financial tech company. I make great money, own a home, and have a clean record. But 5 years ago, I hacked into a university database and changed my grades to get my degree. I was failing 2 core courses and didn't want to retake them. A friend of mine at the time was deep into cybersecurity and showed me how to bypass firewalls. I accessed the system, altered my transcript, and applied for graduation. No one ever found out. I went on to land a job at a top firm. Everything I have now, my career, my house, my reputation, is built on that lie. I've since cut ties with the person who helped me, but I live with the anxiety that one day someone will audit the records and uncover the truth. If that happens, I could lose everything and face criminal charges. What's worse is that I'm actually good at my job. I just wasn't good at being a student. But that one decision, made in desperation, is the foundation of my entire life. Story 35. When I was 16, I caused a car accident that killed someone. I wasn't supposed to be driving. I didn't even have a license yet. My cousin let me borrow his car to impress a girl. We went for a drive, blasting music, laughing. I took a left too fast and clipped a motorcyclist. He died at the scene. Panicked. My cousin took the blame, saying he was driving. He was 18 at the time and got a suspended sentence for reckless driving. He's never told anyone the truth. Now, I'm 27. I've moved cities, gotten a degree, and built a life. But every year on the accident's anniversary, I feel sick. I look up the man's name and read his obituary. He had a daughter. If anyone ever found out, I'd not only lose my freedom, I'd ruin my cousin's life too. He sacrificed everything for me, and I've tried to live a better life because of it. But I don't think I'll ever forgive myself. Story 36. I work as an online therapist. I have certifications, hundreds of clients, and 5-star reviews. The catch? I never actually finished my psychology degree. I dropped out with 1 semester left due to financial issues, but I was already doing internships and assisting in group therapy sessions. When I realized how easy it was to get work on freelance platforms, I created a fake diploma and applied. That was 3 years ago. Since then, I've helped people through breakups, anxiety, PTSD, you name it, and many of them have thanked me for changing their lives. That's the irony. I'm good at what I do, but I'm always on edge. If a licensing board ever investigated or if a client dug too deep, it would all collapse. I'd be exposed as a fraud. I justify it by telling myself I'm helping people, but I know that's not enough. It's a lie wrapped in good intentions, and I don't know how long I can keep living it. Story 37. People think I'm this cheerful, grounded person. I work in HR, volunteer on weekends, and maintain a tidy apartment. No one knows I've been addicted to stealing since I was a teenager. Started small, candy bars, lip gloss, things I didn't need. But over time, I began stealing more expensive items from department stores. I've never been caught. I don't even do it for the thrill anymore. It's compulsive. I have a closet full of things I'll never use. Designer bags, perfume, electronics still in boxes. I've stolen from stores I pass every day. I've even taken items from friends' homes. Small things, things they might not miss. If anyone found out, I'd lose everything. My job, my friends, my stability. I've thought about therapy, but I'm too afraid someone might report me. I know it's only a matter of time before I slip up. Until then, I keep smiling and pretending everything's fine. Story 38. I'm a youth pastor at a small-town church. Everyone sees me as a wholesome figure. Kind, responsible, trustworthy. But 5 years ago, I ghostwrote term papers and assignments for money. It started in college. I was broke, and someone offered me $100 to write a paper on ethics. The irony wasn't lost on me. Word spread, and soon I had a steady stream of clients. I even wrote entire theses for a few grad students. I stopped after graduation, thinking the past was behind me. But recently, One of the students I helped reached out. They're now a professor and want to catch up. They don't know I still have all the files and proof. If anyone in my community found out, I'd be ruined. My entire image is built on honesty and faith. I've tried to rationalize it as a thing of the past, but the truth is, I built my career while helping others cheat their way through theirs. Story 39. Everyone thinks I'm a loyal employee. I've worked at the same tech firm for 7 years. But what they don't know is that I've been feeding confidential data to a competitor for almost 2. It started when I was passed over for a promotion. A recruiter from a rival company reached out and made an offer I couldn't refuse. I'd remain at my current job but supply data on internal testing and feature development. In return, they'd pay me 5 figures every month. I justified it as a form of justice. If my company didn't value me, why should I stay loyal? But now I'm in too deep. I encrypt everything, use burner phones, and avoid social media. If I'm ever caught, I'd face legal action, lose my livelihood, and destroy every professional connection I've made. But the money's too good to walk away from. And every day I wonder if today's the day I get found out. Story 40. When I was 14, I created a fake identity online and catfished someone for almost a year. It started as a joke with friends. We wanted to see if a guy we knew would fall for a fake profile. He did. But then it got personal. I started talking to him alone, and we had long, emotional conversations. He told me about his dad's death, his depression, his fears. I started feeling guilty, but I kept going. Eventually, I ghosted him, deleted everything. He never found out it was me. Years later, we crossed paths again. He didn't recognize me, but I recognized him. He's married now. If he ever learned the truth, it would devastate him. I stole a year of his emotional growth and made a mockery of his vulnerability. I was only a kid, but I can't shake the feeling that I permanently damaged someone. I've never spoken about it until now. Story 41. I'm an immigration attorney, and I'm undocumented. My parents brought me to the U.S. when I was 4. I grew up here, went to school here, and even earned my law degree here through DACA protections. But my status was always in limbo. When DACA was threatened, I panicked. I managed to obtain a fake birth certificate and used it to apply for naturalization. I never got caught. Now I'm a fully licensed attorney, practicing in a state that prides itself on immigrant rights. I've helped dozens of families get legal status. I speak at conferences. I'm even writing a book. But if anyone knew how I actually became a citizen, everything would collapse. I'd lose my license, my job, and possibly face deportation. My clients trust me with their lives, and I live in fear that one day, my entire career will be exposed as a fraud, even though I became the very person I wish had helped me back then. Story 42. I'm a pediatric nurse, and I've been deliberately underdosing children with behavioral diagnoses for the past year. I know how horrifying that sounds, but I've come to believe the system is over-medicating kids, especially those labeled with ADHD or anxiety. It started with one child who came in completely zoned out. I adjusted the dosage slightly, and within days, he could hold a conversation again. Then I did it with another, and another. I keep records showing the prescribed dose, but I give them slightly less, just enough to keep doctors and parents satisfied. I tell myself I'm doing the right thing, that I'm protecting kids from a pharmaceutical industry that sees them as test subjects. But I know what I'm doing is illegal, unethical, and dangerous if misjudged. If anyone found out, I'd lose my license, face lawsuits, and probably jail time. But I'd still believe I was right. Story 43. I've been married for 6 years. My husband is kind, supportive, and a great father. But he doesn't know that I'm a convicted felon. Before we met, I spent 8 months in prison for credit card fraud. I was part of a small operation that cloned cards and used them to buy high-end electronics. I was 22, broke, and naive. I cooperated with authorities, got a reduced sentence, and had the charges sealed. When I met my husband, I told him I had a rough patch in my 20s, but never gave details. We built a life together. He thinks I've always been clean-cut and responsible. If he ever found out, I don't know what he'd do. He's a police officer. Ironic, right? I've built a new life on top of a lie. And every day I wonder if that foundation will crumble. Story 44. I work for a nonprofit that advocates for climate protection. My public persona is that of a zero-waste, vegan environmentalist. But in secret, I fly thousands of miles each year for a luxury travel blog I run under a fake name. I started the blog anonymously during quarantine and it took off. Brands send me free products, hotels invite me to stay, and I make more from it than my day job. But the flights, the consumption, the carbon footprint, it all contradicts everything I stand for publicly. I've even spoken at events criticizing airline emissions and posted videos about reducing travel. Meanwhile, I've flown to Bali, Iceland, and Dubai in the past 6 months alone. If my real identity were ever linked to the blog, not only would I be fired, I'd be blacklisted from the activism community. I feel like two people living completely opposite lives. One fights for the planet. The other documents luxury resorts on Instagram. Story 45. When I was in my early 30s, I donated sperm to make extra money. I never thought about it again, until my wife and I had trouble conceiving and used a different sperm donor. We now have a beautiful daughter, almost 4 years old. But here's the part that could ruin everything. I later found out, through a genetic matching site, that one of my biological children from my donation is her half-sibling. Same donor bank. Same batch. No one screened for genetic overlap. The odds are low, but they happened. My wife has no idea. Neither does the donor child's family. If this ever got out, it would devastate everyone. My daughter shouldn't have to grow up knowing this. And I'm terrified that one day, through some casual DNA test, she'll find out that her father is also biologically related to her mother's donor child. I check ancestry sites weekly, praying no new matches show up. Story 46. I'm a high school counselor, and I once emotionally manipulated a student into staying silent about a serious issue. A few years ago, a teacher at our school crossed boundaries with a student. Not criminal, but deeply inappropriate. The student confided in me. I knew if she reported it, it would spark a scandal, and I was under pressure to keep the school's image clean. So I steered her away from reporting. I framed it as empowering her to handle it on her own. I used words like resilience and moving forward. She agreed to let it go. That teacher quietly left the school at the end of the year. I've told myself I was protecting her from being labeled a troublemaker. But I know I was protecting the school and myself. If that student ever speaks up, I could lose my job and reputation. Worse, I might have contributed to her feeling powerless when she needed someone to fight for her. Story 47. I used to be a deepfake artist on the dark web. People paid me to create fake videos of celebrities, politicians, and even private individuals. I never asked what they were used for, and I didn't care as long as they paid. It started as a tech hobby. I was fascinated by AI and image manipulation. The money came later. I made thousands creating fake apology videos, revenge porn, and even death threats made to look like they came from someone's ex. I stopped 2 years ago, but the videos are still out there. I sometimes get emails from people begging me to take them down. I ignore most of them. I tell myself it's not my problem anymore. If anyone connected those videos to me, I'd be done. My current employer is a cybersecurity firm. I give lectures on online safety. If they knew what I used to do, I'd be fired instantly. And maybe I deserve that. Story 48. In college, I faked having cancer to avoid failing out. Started with one lie. I missed a big exam and told my professor I had a health issue. He was kind, offered an extension. The next time, I said it was more serious. Eventually, I claimed I was undergoing chemotherapy. I shaved my head. I lost weight on purpose. I forged doctor's notes. Professors bent over backward to accommodate me. Friends held fundraisers. I graduated with honors and left the lie behind. But I still see a few of those people on social media. One recently posted about how inspired they were by my strength. If the truth ever came out, I'd lose every bit of credibility I've built. I work in healthcare now. People trust me. But I've never told a soul what I did. I don't even recognize the person I was back then. But I know that version of me still lives in someone's memory, as a hero I never really was. Story 49. I was part of a jury on a high-profile assault case, and I lied during voir dire to stay on the panel. I had read about the case before being summoned. I knew who the defendant was and had already formed an opinion, but I wanted to be part of it. It felt like being inside an episode of a courtroom drama. So when the lawyers asked if we knew anything about the case, I said no. I answered every question to appear unbiased. I was selected. During deliberations, I pushed hard for a guilty verdict. I was persuasive, articulate, and convincing. The defendant was convicted. Months later, I saw a documentary that presented new evidence that wasn't shown during trial. It shook me. I realized I had helped convict someone I might not have had I truly been impartial. If it ever came out that I lied to get on that jury, it would invalidate the case. I'd face criminal charges, and I'd have to live with the possibility that I helped send an innocent man to prison. Story 50. I'm a wedding photographer. I've shot over 200 weddings in the past decade. But at one particularly lavish event 5 years ago, I made a choice I can never undo. The couple had a no-phones policy. Only I was allowed to take photos. During the ceremony, I saw the groom texting someone. He was hiding his phone poorly. Later, while editing photos, I noticed the same number pop up in multiple shots. The curiosity got the better of me. I used software to enhance the screen in one image. It was a message to someone saved as M. Redheart. I wish it were you up here. I knew the bride. She was kind, genuine. I couldn't believe what I saw. But instead of telling her, I deleted the photo. I stayed quiet, took the paycheck, and delivered a perfect album. They're still married. I see their anniversary posts online. But I know the truth. If she ever found out I knew and said nothing, I'd lose my career, and any respect I have for myself as an artist who's supposed to capture truth. Story 51. I work in pharmaceutical research, and I've been falsifying data for over a year. It started small, just minor adjustments to make results look more favorable. Our team was under pressure from investors, and we needed positive outcomes to secure funding. I never expected it to snowball. Now, entire trial outcomes hinge on my numbers. Our drug is moving into phase 3 trials, and I know the data is unreliable. It might be effective, but it also might not be. And if it fails now, everything collapses. I think about the patients who trust our findings, the doctors who believe in our reports. If the truth came out, I'd lose my job, my credentials, and possibly face criminal charges. But worse than that, I'd be responsible for misleading thousands of people. I tell myself I'll come clean after the next phase. But that phase keeps moving. Story 52. My fiancé thinks I'm debt-free. That's the lie I built our relationship on. In reality, I owe over $90,000 in credit card and personal loan debt, most from years of compulsive shopping and failed online business ventures. I've kept it hidden by paying the minimums, moving balances, and using prepaid cards. We're planning a wedding. She wants to buy a house. She talks about kids and college funds. And I smile and agree, knowing there's no financial future unless I confess. I've come close to telling her, but every time I do, I imagine the look on her face when she realizes I'm not the responsible, stable man she thinks I am. If the truth came out, she'd leave. I know she would. She grew up poor and values financial security more than anything. I've created a fantasy life, and I don't know how to tear it down without taking her with it. Story 53. I ghostwrite celebrity memoirs. Everyone loves the stories, the big moments, the heartfelt revelations. But I made half of them up. The client gives me a list of bullet points, and I turn them into memories. Childhood trauma? Fabricated. Comeback stories? Mostly fiction. One book even made the bestseller list. Fans cried reading it. Book clubs analyzed it. The celebrity was praised for their raw honesty. They sent me a thank you bottle of champagne. I felt sick just looking at it. I've signed airtight NDAs, so I'm legally protected. But if anyone found out how much of that book, and others like it, was fiction, it would destroy not just my career, but theirs. People want emotion, not accuracy. And I've become very good at delivering that. But I wonder how many lives I've reshaped with lies that were never mine to tell. Story 54. I'm a pastor. And I don't believe in God. I used to. I went to seminary full of passion, convinced I was doing something meaningful. But over the years, I lost my faith. I didn't have a crisis, I just stopped believing. The sermons became harder to write. The prayers felt empty. But the community needed me. I perform weddings, baptisms, funerals, moments that mean the world to people. And I still offer comfort, even if I don't believe in eternity. I tell myself I'm doing good regardless. That compassion doesn't require faith. But every Sunday, as I stand at the pulpit, I feel like a fraud. If my congregation ever discovered the truth, they'd be devastated. I'd lose my job, my home, my identity. So I keep preaching hope, even though I don't feel it anymore. Story 55. I'm a paramedic. I once let someone die. It was a domestic violence call. We arrived to find a man unconscious and bleeding. His wife was sobbing nearby. I recognized her. Months earlier, we'd responded to a call where she had a broken arm and he'd claimed she fell. That night, I hesitated. We were trained to act fast, but I moved slowly. I told the team to wait for backup. I double-checked vitals that didn't need checking. By the time we got him in the ambulance, he was gone. I didn't kill him, but I didn't try to save him the way I should have. No one questioned it. It looked like a standard response. The wife thanked me. She hugged me. If anyone ever reviewed the footage or noticed the delay, I could lose everything. But I sleep better knowing she's finally safe. Story 56. I created a fake online persona that ruined someone's relationship. Started as a joke. My friend was dating a guy we all thought was shady. I made a fake account, pretended to be a woman he was talking to, and slowly got him to flirt. Screenshots were sent. They broke up. We celebrated. I deleted the account. But then he started spiraling. He lost his job, moved out of state, and posted cryptic things online about being set up. I didn't expect it to go that far. I just wanted to protect my friend. But she still doesn't know it was me. She cried in my arms when he left, and I comforted her like I had nothing to do with it. If she ever found out, I'd lose her friendship instantly. She still says he was the love of her life. And all I can do is nod and pretend I had no part in tearing it apart. Story 57. I'm a middle school teacher, and I once helped a student cheat on a standardized test. He was bright and kind, but his reading level lagged. His future depended on passing that test, scholarships, magnet programs, everything. So I gave him clues. I coughed during wrong answers. I circled practice questions that matched the real ones. He passed. I felt proud, even heroic. But now he's in a program where he's struggling. He's drowning in expectations I helped create. Every time I see him flounder, I wonder if I did the right thing. I gave him a boost, but maybe I also gave him a burden. If the school board ever discovered what I did, I'd be fired. Parents would call me a disgrace. And maybe they'd be right. Story 58. I'm a married man, and I've been in love with my sister-in-law for years. It started before I got married. We met at a family event and clicked instantly. But she was already in a relationship, and I ended up dating, and eventually marrying, her sister. We've never acted on it. But there are moments. Long glances. Inside jokes. A hand held a beat too long. We both know. I love my wife. She's kind, smart, solid. But every time her sister walks into the room, I feel like I'm suffocating. We've built entire lives on parallel tracks, never crossing the line but always walking close to it. If anyone ever found out, it would destroy two families. So we say nothing, pretend, smile, and carry the weight of what might have been. Story 59. I faked a mental illness for attention, and now I can't stop. In college, I was lonely. I started posting vague tweets about depression. People reached out. Felt good to be seen. So I escalated, talked about panic attacks, trauma, even suicidal thoughts. None of it was real, but the support kept coming. I became that strong person who keeps fighting. I even got invited to speak on a panel about student mental health. Now, 5 years later, it's part of my identity. I've built friendships and a career around advocacy. But I live in fear that someone from those years will call me out. That they'll say, "She made it up." And they'd be right. I did. And I don't know how to undo it without losing everything. Story 60. I've been living under a stolen identity for over a decade. After fleeing an abusive home at 17, I ended up homeless. I found a backpack at a bus terminal with ID, credit cards, and a birth certificate. The guy looked like me. I took a chance. I applied for jobs using his name, got a place to live, enrolled in community college. The real person never came forward, and I've built an entire life since, career, bank accounts, even a marriage. Sometimes I wonder if he died. If I'm walking around in the shadow of someone who had no one to miss him. If the truth ever came out, I'd be charged with identity theft, fraud, and deported. But if I hadn't done it, I wouldn't be alive. I tell myself that every night. And sometimes, I almost believe it.